episode of the Explicitly Pro-Life podcast. I'm Kristan Hawkins, your host. Joining me today is my good friend Theresa Barbale. She is a resident there in Naples, Florida. She's the executive director of the Life Network of South Florida. And many of you are like, what the heck is that? What you need to know about Life Network of South Florida is they run two very unique programs, Authentic Abstinence and the MyMentor app. And then once again, you might be asking yourself, what is that? Well, you will know what the MyMentor app is very, very soon. Theresa and her team have been working on an amazing new technology that's going to go head-to-head, directly compete with Planned Parenthood and their artificial intelligence app, Rue. I've talked a little bit about it in the past, but I want Theresa to explain about this. And so you're going to have heard about it first on the Explicitly Pro-Life podcast. So I'm super, super excited to be talking to you about that. Theresa is a graduate of Ave Maria University. She graduated with her Master's of Arts in Catechesis and Evangelization, also from Franciscan University. She works with her husband. They co-founded the company BGM Solutions that she also runs in addition to the Life Network of South Florida. Most importantly, she is a mom of 5 and she is pregnant with her 6 as we speak today. Every time I see her, she's so skinny, I forget she's pregnant. She has to remind me she has to use the restroom. It's totally unfair, but Theresa, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. Yes, I am 20 weeks pregnant with baby number 6 and so excited. And it has been a dream pregnancy. I'm going to tell you, with my first 5, I got sick. I was miserable. I was even getting shots because I was vitamin deficiency, throwing up, like all of it. This pregnancy has been a dream. Number 6, when this baby comes, I'm like, I don't know, like
either
what God
this dream is
decided.
going to be an angel, or this dream is this baby's just just waiting till he or she is born, and then the baby's just going to be an absolute terror, like terrible 2s, terrible 3s. We'll see, angel or not, we'll see. But I'm so excited, and you're waiting to find out the sex of the baby.
No, it's a boy.
Oh yeah, it's a boy. Okay, see, I love it.
Yeah,
I just assumed because you have so many, you would have all of the gear now to like wait, but
yeah, we have our oldest is a girl, and then we have 4 boys. And
oh, that right. Yeah, you
5
needed to
boys
know.
in a row. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
We don't have any female gear.
Try for 7, I guess. Maybe you'll get your other girl.
Hey.
Okay. So, all right, we can talk all day about kids. Obviously, we do.
Exactly.
One of the things I love about what Theresa does is, I've moved into Norma, our 5th wheel camper, and the Hawkins family is traveling the country. I need to do a whole podcast on my camper. Like, I could talk hours about it. And it has been our Hawkins family solution to trying to keep us together and while I'm traveling. But every time I see you, there's a kid with you, your husband's right next to you, you travel with your family. And so
we do.
I love that. And I think that many of the viewers, especially and listeners who are young women, I always get like a question about, how do you be a mom and be a wife and run Students for Life? And, I'm very lucky to have an amazing team at Students for Life, but I have a great partner, my husband, and you try to just like make it work. So,
I think that it has to be a mission for both of you. That's the thing. Like I know people where it's hard, but it's like one has a calling and the other doesn't. And it has to be a specific calling where your spouse feels like their calling is to support the mission that you're both on together, and that their calling is specifically to support you and whatever crazy thing that is. And it's not for everybody.
That would
it's
be your
not.
husband.
Yeah. Yes.
I just see your husband at events, and I'm just like, oh gosh, there she goes again. But he does so good. My husband would never like go into the events. At least your husband, he has the suits and he comes to all the stuff. My husband would be upstairs in the hotel room or in Norma.
And I bring the kids too. Like depends on the events. We dress them out in suits. They've got every single stinking color.
My kids don't even know. It's so funny because you're so much more adventurous. My kids don't even own jeans. All they have is sweatpants and shorts. Like, I think one time we went to Sisters of Life Gala and I was like panicking. So I took Gunnar to the Gap on 5th Avenue and got sweatpant looking jeans. And that was like the biggest concession I ever made. I have him with his sisters, and they looked like jeans, but they were sweatpants. And so he was happy and I was happy. But yeah, your kids always look adorable. I wish I could get my kids to that. Okay, so enough about the personal stuff, although everyone always wants to know personal stuff. Let's talk about how you're kicking Planned Parenthood's ass. So tell me how you got this idea, where this originated with the MyMentor app. It kind of, I think, came out of the athletic abstinence. So give me the backstory and tell me what you're up to.
So we did abstinence education in the schools. The company that I work for has been in the schools for like 16 years. Okay. Mm-hmm. Public schools, private schools, Catholic schools, you name it. Sometimes I go in and I'll speak actually at the schools. Like if there's teachers who don't feel confident teaching abstinence, maybe they never practice abstinence. Maybe they're at a Christian school and they want someone mm-hmm. biblical. So I was specifically doing that prior to COVID. And then COVID happened. And
that abstinence education is very effective, right? Because you guys have very some good stats there in Naples area.
Yes. And there's a couple different ways you can get people to accept it in your school. So we've decreased the birth weight to unwed teen mothers by 64%. And we have a 19.5% higher graduation rate and the lowest absentee rating in the state. And why those numbers are so important is so your very secular school people like the number of absentee days and graduation rate. And I joke because I'm the best friend of every leftist education person.
I heard you told me they have some swanky conferences you've been attending.
They do. And it's
much better than the Republicans, I guess, the conservatives.
Well, it's hilarious because all they're worried about is money. So when you go in and you talk to them and say, look, if there's 1,000 kids in your school and 20% more graduate, and you have, say your attrition rate is a loss of 5% per day, and we are, actually I think on the highest where Planned Parenthood is in the schools in our state, their absentee rating is 18% per day. So that means 18% of the kids are not attending school, whereas we're at 5%.
So 1 out of 5 are almost missing every day.
Yep. And schools are paid
That hurts their federal funding, right?
It does. It hurts a lot because they're paid by day,
it all
by
comes
student.
Together. Okay.
So
they need butts and seats, or they lose taxpayer funds. All right, now I'm getting it.
Bingo.
Now I'm seeing the sales pitch.
Every day they need kids in those seats, and we can give them an extra $1 million on a 1,000-student school in a 5-year plan. And so they may not care about the mission, about how it helps kids. Mm-hmm. They're looking at it from a serious budgetary standpoint, and they're like, look, financially, this is a way better decision. And I always joke, I can usually tell when I walk in, like, if the person sitting behind the table, they're like, what about this abstinence education? And in most states, you can look at your state and see, like, the regulations. But a lot of states, the education does not even have to be medically accurate. And I'm not kidding. So sex ed does not have to be medically accurate. I bring this chart with me because I can look at state by state. But it doesn't have to be medically accurate. It doesn't have to be taught in any particular time. It depends on the state if it's taught by a nurse or if it's taught by a teacher. But they have very few guidelines around it. And so the school just basically wants to finish it the cheapest way possible. And in most cases, we donate most of our services because Planned Parenthood donates most of their services. And Planned Parenthood does it because they're creating clients. They use the Burger King media franchise model to create clients by being there first, by explaining first, by being the trusted person, by getting in front of the kids first. So we were doing the same thing. We're like, oh, we'll be there first. We'll be in front of them. We'll be nice. I'll be the person, and I tell them, go back to their parents, talk to their parents, don't go have an abortion. And it is really fulfilling. But when 2020 came and we couldn't do that in person, we had to create videos. And I started really looking at data. It gave me a chance to look at data. And we created a whole video series, which is also federally approved and recommended by the Blue Ribbon schools and the Federal Department of Education in the current year, not past years. We're in 2022 and we're recommended in 2022. So when you go and you say, I have a program, they're going to ask you, who was it recommended by? And we are federally recommended, which.
So can you take your abstinence program? Can this go into any state, or are there certain states?
Any state.
How does one get your program in their schools?
They can go and talk to a teacher who maybe, it depends on like your particular, sometimes even by county, how the sex ed is allowed and decided. So just talking to teachers, like going to the curriculum day, yes, going to the school board and figuring out who is the decision maker in your kid or your grandkid or your neighbor's kid, or in my case, no kid that I know, their lives, and help to influence that and make that change and make a difference, because it really does help. And you'll see kids who, not just in school, like we talk always about the stats in school, but after school. So if you have a kid who's, Planned Parenthood wants to sell 3 abortions to women in between the ages of 15 and 21, like that's their goal. So in order to do that, per woman, and ideally they want more. So they're trying to build this client base, and it's truly diabolical. And they don't care about the emotional ramifications that all this has on the long-term life of that woman or the potential father of that baby. And they forget that the overall success of those kids who are in school is determined by their choices then. So by preventing them from having to deal with Planned Parenthood and make those decisions early, we've given them more time and a higher likelihood of success, graduating college, going on to live above the poverty level. Like I joked with Charlie Kirk a couple of years ago. I said, we just teach kids to live above the poverty level. If you graduate high school and wait to have sex and have children after marriage, and you, in fact, are totally absent and have sex in marriage and after age 20, you're going to live above the poverty level most likely. And that's a big deal too, that you've got kids who will be financially independent.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's like only 2% of people who graduate high school get a job and wait until I think 21 to have a child, or 20 or 21 are only 2% of people who do those 3 things end up below the poverty line. So, I mean, you want to talk about making a long-term strategic change in the lives of millions of kids. That's what we have to do. And that's something that fiscal conservatives and people who want just more taxpayer dollars, that's something that everyone should be able to agree on, is that we don't want kids. And the challenge is, and I talk about this a lot on campus, is it's how do you break this cycle? Because, a child born into poverty is 7 times more likely to live in poverty his or her whole life. And where you're at, which is very interesting, in South Florida, you have one of like the richest cities in the country, or the richest city in the country per whatever capita or whatever. But then you also have like the poorest cities in the country. Like they're like right next to each other.
Well, you need the staff and the employees to make the wealthy people happy. Let's be real. You go to the Ritz-Carlton. We're one of the only cities in the country that has 2 Ritz-Carltons, because we're that ridiculous.
Wow, and I didn't even know there was 2 Ritz-Carltons in Naples.
And they're less than 2 miles apart. So most people have like 5 Starbucks. We have 2 Ritz-Carltons.
That's significant.
And so it's ridiculous, because you have to have staff and you have to have people to run that, as well as our area is very much a farming town, which goes back to a lot of these kids were in these programs. And I started seeing a decline in numbers. So don't let anybody ever tell you that numbers don't matter. Follow your data, look at your data, look at the data that people are putting out regarding you. Like even the left, like my husband said the other day, he goes, I got a Planned Parenthood ad. Like, what the heck? And I said, because I'm always looking up their data. I'm always reading what they're doing all the time. So I said, they probably must think that we're like huge supporters, because this nutcase is always reading our data. But if you understand what they're doing, you're able to work against them. And what I started seeing was in our area, the schools were sending kids and recommending kids to the RU chatbot system.
Okay. And explain RU for folks who don't stock Planned Parenthood like you and I. What is RU?
So RU is a completely automated system where you will create a profile just like you would for social media. You will talk about yourself, tell them about yourself, and they will talk to you through an automated system of questions. So it'll ask you your nationality, what your parents' nationality is, are your parents married? And it's designed for kids. They say like high school, but we know that it's in middle school as well. And so they kind of come up with this profile, and then they start making recommendations for your life. And this is entirely a robot. There's no human being involved in this. And I talked to volunteers who were also looking at this, and I had one volunteer, and she said she was a 15-year-old Asian girl, separated parents, but stable income. She went through like the whole thing, like made this fake girl. And then at the end, she was told that she was transgendered and that was probably her problem, and that they could recommend a series and a course of supplements for her. And you can get those supplements at Planned Parenthood. And meanwhile, my friend, and I do these talks quite regularly where I will talk about Rue, and there's usually people who do not believe what I'm saying, and I can see them, I can pick them out in the back, and they open up their phone or their tablet and they start looking at Rue, and you see their faces, they get shocked. They're like, this is terrible. And then it'll talk about masturbation and having sex, female, male, oral. I mean, it is horrible. And they look at you and they go, this is so much worse than what you shared. And I said, well, I have to keep it PG or else I'm going to get kicked out of this conference, you know?
Well, this is explicitly pro-life podcast, so you can say the truth.
So I can tell the truth. Well, so they sit there and they're shocked. And it's like, they say, we want Rue to be your go-to person. And it's a robot that automates questions and will tell your kid, you need to masturbate, and tell, your neighbor's kid that. Tell your neighbor's kid the way they need to think about each other. It's sexualize everyone, and then recommend birth control, sex change drugs, and tell them to go to Planned Parenthood to get them. And also it's creating this understanding that instead of going to a person or someone you trust for information, you go directly to Planned Parenthood because they've been answering your questions all along.
That's right. It's to create a customer business cycle.
Exactly.
I was on it this weekend. I was explaining to someone at a conference what your app is doing. So I pulled up Rue, and now they do this is new for me. They started suggesting questions for me to ask.
Yes.
And so my suggested question was, what types of foods can I eat to change the taste of semen? And
you sit there and you go, this is just, and I love doing it at these little Baptist churches.
I was mortified because I wasn't planning on going through the worst of the worst with this person. Yeah. It was an older person, and then it was right there was this completely vulgar thing. I mean it made my point as to why as a movement we have to counter this crap. We have to do something. And this is what we talk about Students for Life is we've got to be there first. Like what you just said with the, abstinence education that you've been doing, the curriculum, authentic abstinence that you all have created and launched. We have to beat them. This is why we always say, start a pro-life group in middle school, start it in high school, be that person who reaches that young person first, because the person who reaches them first, there's that loyalty, that bond that's created. So during COVID, you started looking at Rue. What are you doing with this app? What is this app intended to do? Is it going to be a true competitor for Rue?
Yes.
How will it be used, and how can people access it? I guess, is it going to be open to everybody?
So we want to be a true competitor to Rue, but we want to do it better. So when I brought this to my team and said, I have talked about, I actually have a program director who he and I, for about a decade, were going to the March for Life and had been good friends, and said, if these kids just had a mentor in their life, they had a voice, they had somebody positive, we wouldn't have this opposition. We wouldn't be in this situation. Yeah. So we talked about this for a very long time. And I was on a Legatus retreat, and I was kind of the pieces put together. I said, Planned Parenthood is using Rue. They are destroying our kids. Our suicide rate was going through the roof. Our suicide rate for 13 to 18-year-olds went up 435% in a year. And I said, and people are saying, well, it's COVID, it's this, it's that. And I'm like, Well, look at where they're going. We have 2.2 million kids using Rue. I mean, it's not small potatoes. So I said, I first started, I wanted to find a competitor to it because I didn't want to build an app because I was like, this is going to be really expensive. Planned Parenthood dumps so much money into online marketing, online tools, and online abortion because they know that's where the next market is. It's chemical abortion. They want to move people there. They want them to be comfortable with auto-generated answers and not feel the need for real human contact. They want to destroy that. And so they have to do it young. And so I said, the real way to do this is to have real people as mentors, to have real people answering questions, not a robot, that they get interaction with people. They can actually video chat. And I said, we could actually do this and do it beyond anything that Rue ever thought about doing because Planned Parenthood doesn't have the people willing to give their time to change lives. They have people who want to tear people down. They want to suggest questions, but they want to make money. And so
I think what you said is really important. I just want to back up there because you were talking about the suicide rate. And you even, when we started talking about authentic absence, you were talking about, the absentee rate in schools. And the question I think a lot of people have be like, well, how does an abstinence program, how's it going to help lower the suicide rate? How does it help increase the butts and seats number? Like, why, Theresa? What's the fundamental point you're getting at with these curriculums and now with the app?
So healthy kids stay in school. The ones who are not drinking, having sex, getting pregnant, the ones who aren't worried about what their gender is at 16, those kids stay in school and attend school. They don't end up addicted to things. They don't end up dropping out and having to, work at Burger King the rest of their life. Like all those type of things build on each other because we all know one domino knocks down all of them. And when you have kids and you're saying, look, the absentee rating. So if you're going to school every day, you have to be healthy. You can't have an STD. There's an STD now for almost every letter in the alphabet and then some. And I've got a friend who can state all of them very quickly, and it's really disgusting and disturbing. But kids who have an STD will miss 2 to 3 weeks of school a year. And it's very sad to say.
I did not know that.
Yeah, STD.
1 in 2 under 25 have an STD, right?
Yes. Yep. And
so 2 to 3 weeks of school for an STD?
Yeah, depending on which one, especially female STD absentee rate is higher than male, obviously. And so if they've got chlamydia, gonorrhea, they're spending a lot of time at home, especially every time they get a cycle, they're out of school. You're not going to do as well. You're not going to be as likely to graduate. You're not going to be as likely to stay in school. So doing an abstinence program is going to prevent that from happening. You're going to prevent the illness in your kids, and sick kids don't do as well in school. Let's be real, because they have other things that they're worried about, mainly living. And I think that people don't understand that kids are very resilient, but they have to understand goals. And if they have a goal of teaching them goals early, so one of the things we do, and especially in our app, we're going to talk about having a goal and focusing on it, and even if that goal changes, like I always joke, I said, I can sit down in a room and do a vision board with a bunch of kids. And I said, your 13-year-old boys are going to have at least 2 or 3 sports cars on that board. And your 13 to 14-year-old girls typically will have a wedding dress and maybe their doctor. And I do it. So I joke, I'm like, but because you have a goal and you're working towards it, it's easier to make sacrifices instead of saying that, you can't have sex. It's like you're saving it until you reach your goal. And at that time, it's going to be more fruitful. And you can't expect a kid who's hormone jacked up at 14, 15 years old to make reasonable decisions. They need to have that vision board and think they're getting a Ferrari when they're 21, and the reasoning comes later. The reasoning comes in when they realize, look, I'm at a point where I can work for myself. I'm not sick. I went to a Catholic college, right? And still had roommates who had STDs and had to get regular treatments. And I was acutely aware of it. And there was a girl who was in our school who died of chlamydia during her time at school. And it was heartbreaking. She came to school with it. Everybody knew it. She got treatments and there was nothing we could do. She ended up with cancer and passing away. And it was absolutely positively heartbreaking to her family, to her roommates. And she was a beautiful human being who had an unfortunate, no one had talked to her about this beforehand. And I see it with kids in schools. I mean, like I've counseled girls who have had to have hysterectomies at 17, 18 years old because they've been on birth control since they were 10. And they don't talk about that on Planned Parenthood's website. Rue just wants them to get the drugs.
Rue
they
does
don't talk about
not
how
talk
sick they
about
are.
those details. I mean, when I've gone to Rue and had conversations with Rue, and this is why my Gmail ads get really interesting. They all, it's always like, oh, well, you should come in, or let's, I'm just a robot. Let me connect you to a real person now. And, they're constantly trying to upgrade you from the artificial intelligence to walking into their doors, calling them to make an appointment to talk to one of the nurses, like right now. And that is their goal, but they don't tell you this, that, oh, by the way, that little STD, or they call it STI because infection doesn't sound as scary as disease.
Exactly.
That little infection you have can make you miss school, can make you have a hysterectomy, can actually give you cancer and kill you. It's like not this big deal because now everyone has an STD, but like, no, it's an actual really big deal. Okay, I kind of wish the CDC would treat STDs like they treated COVID with the 6 feet apart. Like, sorry, you have to stay 6 feet apart now. There's an STD epidemic. 1 and 2 have an STD 6 feet apart at all times. I mean, I don't know. Like,
you have
I'm
to
terrified.
watch JP Sears. JP Sears does a whole thing where COVID is an STD.
Did he really? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I've been having some health issues, and every time I go into the ER or the emergency room to get treatment, they like ask me if I have an STD, and they always like want to test. And like this one doctor like insisting on testing me. I was like, I don't have an STD. I know I don't have an STD. I've only had one sexual partner my entire life. It's my husband. Like, he's not cheating on me. We live in a camper. We travel the country. Trust me, I would know if the man was cheating on me. But then I was like getting nervous because I'm like, maybe I contracted an STD from a restroom. I don't know. Like, I'm like terrified. Like 6 feet apart, man. Okay, so tell me about the app. What is the app going to do? When is it going to be available for students who like to be publicizing it? And like, how are we going to be able to push it out as a movement?
Okay, so the app's supposed to be available in June. We are going to have a pre-launch where people can sign up for their email and download the start of the app, hopefully in the next 2 weeks, so we can get an idea of how many users we're going to have right away. Because
what's the website for it? What will be the website?
Well, it'll be in the App Store. It'll be in Apple and Android App Store, and it'll be MyMentor, or MYM is the three-letter.
Okay, so
yeah,
by the time we air this episode, this should be out for beta testing in the Google and Android, the Google and the iPhone.
We should have a pre-launch that'll get you up to where you're going to be the first one to find out when the training's available, when you can see what a mentor would look like. And we'll have little teasers, videos, that sort of thing throughout, so that people are aware of what's going on. And I know that one of the biggest challenges we have is making sure we have enough mentors, because we have a lot of schools who just want to hand out QR codes to every student and be like, go on this. So we know that users are not going to be hard to find. So like our marketing team is like, we need to market for mentors, the people who take care of those kids. And we're trying to make it as easy as possible. Like I joke, I said, if you can give 15 minutes a week and it doesn't matter where, you can be a mentor. And it doesn't matter how old you are. It doesn't matter how young you are. So I worked in ministry, and I would have volunteers who are in their 80s who are just as successful as a volunteer in their 20s. So I don't think that age, sex, race, anything should exclude you from changing a life and building that relationship.
15 minutes a week.
15 minutes a week. That's it.
Okay. And so when we download the MyMentor app, we can sign up to be a mentor. So you can sign up to be a user or a mentee.
Yes.
Like a mentee or a mentor. Sorry. Okay.
Yes.
That's
and
amazing.
There will definitely be a capacity for organizations to use it as well. So like, we have other contracts that look like they're going to be coming up where people, if they want to specialize, for example, we have a fallen officer society for the families of officers who have died in the line of battle, and it's for their kids. And they will have their own set of mentors who are trained in that area. The same with if you have divorce, and so these training modules will be housed in there, so you can do as much training or as little training as possible. And you'll know, like I always joke, you know where you're weakest and where you're strongest. And looking at that and saying, you know what, I went through this as a teenager, I went through this as a young adult, this is where I'm going to be able to help someone who's going through the same thing, and focusing on that area. And when you set up your profile, you'll pick those things that you think make you different or that you could best help with.
That's awesome. I can't wait to sign up to be a mentor. That's going to be so neat to do. I'll also
totally
have
thrilled
to pretend like I'm a mentoree too, just to test it out for a little bit.
Yes, just like we do to Planned Parenthood. I'm like,
yeah, it's just like we do to Planned Parenthood. I'm going to have to do it to you too. Sorry.
Yeah.
I'm so excited to hear about this and to hear everything that you guys are doing with Authentic Abstinence now with the MyMentor app to like kick Planned Parenthood's butt to the curb.
Exactly.
And meet young people first before Planned Parenthood has a chance to. I have to wrap up this episode. I know we could talk forever. Where should people go to get in touch with you or to follow everything that you're doing? Are you guys on like social media? Like, where's the place to follow
Personally,
you?
I'm on Facebook and TikTok, which is funny. And then our organization is www.mymentorprogram.org.
I'm going to it right now because I don't think I even have your website. MyMentorprogram.org.
.org.
All right, I'm pulling it up right now.
Okay, wonderful.
Okay. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for what you're doing. I can't wait to have you on, hopefully soon, and get an update after this website launches and it makes Planned Parenthood go into a complete tissy that you're kicking their butt. So I love it, and I love the thinking of let's be first. Let's and that's not only directly compete, but let's out-compete Planned Parenthood in the marketplace. Let's do something more innovative, more effective than Planned Parenthood would ever have envisioned. So I just absolutely love your spirit, everything you guys are doing there in South Florida with the Life Network. Thank you, Theresa, for being such an amazing leader. Hopefully now you love Theresa just as much as I do after listening to this podcast. And I think I did an earlier episode on How to Win This Week with some Theresa's best fundraising tips. So make sure you go and check that out if you lead a pro-life group on your campus, a students' life group, or a pregnancy center, or you're thinking about starting your own pro-life mission or organization. Thanks, guys, for tuning in. Make sure you hit subscribe and you share this episode with your friends. Bye.
Bye. God bless.